I'm a very curious person. I think you are too. We would want to try to understand what was going on. And yes, we would speculate that this was caused by some kind of intelligent agent. Uh, are you going to get around to talking about God today, or are you going to stay focused on this hypothetical example? And how much more time do we have? I don't know whether you need to leave soon or not.
Okay, first of all, that's not hypothetical example. That is 100% reality that we experience. So, and actually, I presented the reality through this hypothetical example to really just help us to understand the reality. That's really not just, that's not just a story, a just make up story. It is, to me, it is the description of the reality, is the description of what we are experiencing in the universe. And first of all, it seems like you agree that if we really have such experience, and if we clearly rule out the possibility of dream or illusion and hoax, then you will think that we will have no option other than just thinking or accepting that this almost must be the work of an intelligent being. So you didn't say what will be the likelihood that you will actually believe that those will be the work of an intelligent being, but it seems like you will be, if you are absolutely sure about the unlikelihood of the other options that you mentioned, then it seems like you will perhaps easily say, 99% with likelihood that those are the work of an intelligent being. So that's good. It seems like that's really once you look at the option and look the reality, you will in this case conclude that this must be the work of an intelligent being. Now, what I want you to tell me that if you think that this is a hypothetical case, not the reality from the Big Bang to now, I want you to use your scientific knowledge and try to think about the event of the Big Bang and after the Big Bang and see what happened in the universe and see what came out of this explosion. And just the only thing I want you to, for the sake of simplification, I want you to consider whatever the basic blocks of material you get out of the Big Bang. I want you to consider those simple, in this case, particles as a grain of sand. That's for the sake of our discussion. I want you to just to consider them just a grain of sand, meaning that just a simple one type of particles. Now, when you look at the scientific explanation of what happened after the Big Bang, it seems to me everything is just a rearrangement of those simple particles through the push of the wind, which you describe it as an energy. So I want you to see how you can see the difference between the two.
All right, well, your hypothetical example is not reality. It's a product of your imagination. There's nothing like that has ever happened in real experience on the Earth or anywhere else that we're aware of. So, but I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to build an analogy and talk about an analogy. Just to be clear, it's important that you understand that you can't have one kind of substance and one kind of energy, and you can't have a short period of time to get complex objects. You need many types of substance, many types of energy, and a lot of time, and you can get complex objects. And yes, from the moment of the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago till now has been the story of increasing complexity, going from the simple to the complex. All the evidence that we have is that the early universe was very simple. much more simple than what we see today. Today we see complex objects. For example, living things are very complex objects. Ourselves, we're complex. Even a bacterium is complex, and that's one of the simplest living things that there is. But all of this has come about through the action of natural processes over a long period of time. I don't see that there's any good evidence that it was influenced by any kind of intelligence. Intelligence is a late development. Intelligence has occurred such that organisms can build machines only in the last, let's say 50,000 years. 15,000 years is just a flash in time compared to 13.7 billion years. So intelligence is a late development, and there's no evidence that there was intelligence before the development of human intelligence about 50,000 years ago. So that's what I would say about what you've said so far.
Okay. Yeah, that is what I tried to explain basically through that story, was to come up with an in this case analogy. You're right, but I think it's very strong analogy, a very reasonable one. Here's why. I think when you really look at the scientific explanation of the universe, that we see that scientifically now we accept that once upon a time there was, something very intense, very, kind of a tiny, what I call the seed of the universe. And that seed, we don't really want to go beyond that and discuss about the origin of the seed, but when we scientifically accept that with enormous explosion, we got the Big Bang, that means that the seed exploded. And what happened, some basic elements came out of the seed. The basic elements, you can have discussion whether it was 1 or 10, but we know limited number of basic elements came out of this explosion. Now, the rest of story is that with this explosion you get the basic elements, and you get, in this case, the energy. That's all. The energy push the basic elements, and the rest of story is just the arrangement of this basic element. That's all. So that's why, for the sake of simplicity, what I try to see, I say, let's replace those basic elements with grain of sand. And if you want to have different type of basic element, let's imagine there are different size of a grain of sand, but they are ultimately grain of sand. That's why, when you think now, as I say, quark is perhaps the basic element, but imagine that we identify one, or if you want to really push more, I will agree, I will say, okay, let's have a few or several basic elements, not big deal. Now, if everything is just the arrangement of this basic element, to me, there's no difference between the wind coming and pushing the grain of sand and arranging them, and giving them different form, and with different form, which basically nothing other than the arrangement of the particles, that you come up with different products. That's what you observe as a complex objects. Now, to me, in this case, that when you truly look at the universe and accept the simplicity at the beginning, and accept that everything that you get from the beginning was the very simple basic elements and the energy, I don't see any difference between the windstorm and the sand causing all these complex objects.
Okay, if you wanted to make your analogy a better one, then you would have to say that there were about 24 different types of sand particles. From what I've read, that's the minimum number of basic particles that are believed to exist by physicists now. And some physicists estimate there may be maybe 100 different kinds of particles. So if you wanted to take 24 as kind of a minimum number, I would find that acceptable. on